Here is the space station. I think the main gist of what we were trying to achieve with this at the very, very beginning was the idea of this giant perimeter gun that orbits the Earth and is used for satellite defense.
One thing I really liked about the space station was how you could actually really have a sense of where you were in the station with all the windows looking out onto the gun, like all these atrium spaces where you've got a lot of sight lines to other parts of the station that you later get to. Unlike the Pillar of Autumn, you really didn't have a sense of how big the structure was.
That leads us onto Old Mombasa. We had a lot of destruction present in this to really try to set the mood of the Earth being under attack. It was sort of an inspiration of what would an old ethnic neighborhood look like in the future. So a lot of stuff has been retrofitted with wires, and it was a nice way to transitions into the newer architecture, which you eventually get to after you play through the beach and the tunnels and all that. And you eventually end up over what we call New Mombasa.
A lot of the look and feel of the city was based on either concepts that were painted or from actual photographs of the current city of Mombasa that exists in Kenya. And so that's why it seems familiar. At the same time, we've tried to add as simply as possible signs of 500 years of human advance.
It sort of still harkens to the arcology concept that Chris Lee was working on a long time ago for the E3.
You'll see a lot of architecture here, like this large bridge. There's some highway sections, and then the new city. And the reason why the arcology was replaced is because it was such a massive structure that you really felt like you were just in a gray metal canyon and not in a living city nearly as much as the new level. So hopefully it was a change for the better.
Cast giant.
Dave's baby. His big,
worked on this
big
for
baby.
Too long, too many years. It was satisfying to play through, and I played through it today, and I think successfully. The production half of it feels like, okay, this is where they're moving these odd canisters full of gas that they're farming. I think there's a good transition from that to the research area where this predates the Halos. Their idea for this is where they first sort of came into contact with the flood and had this horrible potential war in front of them or in the station.
Okay, here we go. Sentinel Wall. This is where things start to cook up story-wise.
This wall was built by the Forerunners to keep the flood quarantined into a specific area on Delta Halo.
Even the exterior of the quarantine zone is supposed to reflect the barrenness and the lack of life that the Sentinels have been trying to instill in the area by starving it of light and energy and heat and all sorts of good things, and so that's why it's so cold. And we're now at High Charity.
We definitely took a departure from the Covenant stuff that we did in Halo.
We're able to squeeze the most out of the Xbox and actually do all the fancy curves and shiny surfaces that we had drawn out.
We chose a different palette for colors.
Yes, purple.
A lot darker.
Much darker purple than
desaturated.
The mauve tones of Halo 1.
We pulled off a much better organic feel to everything, which was really kind of neat. And so the lighting is going to be very dark and moody.
So now we're looking at
the Delta Halo. It's really cool. It has a lot of beautiful water shots. I think some of the really good overgrowth throughout all of it.
So yeah, we definitely put a lot more attention onto making Forerunner structures look like they've actually aged. First game, they were pretty spick and span. It's somewhat reminiscent of the first control room in terms of its sort of the ziggurat structure that Chris Barrett did in Halo 1. We wanted to relate to that in the spherical room shape, or the control room shape, but unearthed it a lot more.
I think this is really where we hit our stride because the sheer scope and scale of all these levels,
yeah, they're huge.
They're huge.